Hey everyone, Experion here again. Hope everyone's doing well. Wherever this video finds you, I hope you're doing great. These days, honestly, I've been feeling very foggy mentally lately. Can't really concentrate as much. I wonder if it's because of the energies that are at play at the moment, but besides that, I'm doing pretty well myself. But today I wanted to talk about tact and how to be better at it. And you may ask, well, what is tact? And tact is where you're using your discernment to navigate your conversations with others in a way that is kind, respectful, and leaves room to give others grace, right? And it's something I really wanted to talk about today. So, as usual, I've wrote my points. I'll go through them one by one, and yeah, hopefully you find the video helpful, informative, or you just need something to listen to while you go about your day. But to start, I've realized that a lot of spiritually minded ones and ones who have had a lot of experience in life, they tend to be very brutally honest when it comes to how they see the world. Um, in a sense that when we see things, we automatically, instinctively just want to reveal the truth, shed light to the situation, and it's so difficult to not do that, as you are like a ball of light and you just have this instinct to shed light on every shadow you see, right? And some people have these traits where they can see through these things and they can see the truth, and some of them don't even realize that they have that, um, which is something that I feel like that happens to a lot of people where they actually have gifts, but in this world some of those gifts are ended up classified as disorders, but that will change very soon. I firmly do believe that, but moving on, what I wanted to talk about in this aspect is that just because we have this quality, right, about just being brutally honest, or rather, we don't like lying, we don't like untruth, that doesn't mean that we have to employ that light every single time, right? And it took a long time for me to realize that, a very, very long time for me to realize that. Because there would be so many situations where I would be in a situation where I would be honest, I would be truthful, uh, and it would quite literally just blow up the entire situation. Now, you may argue, well, isn't that a good thing? Because, the light, whatever the light shines on, if it ends up blowing up something, it's for the better, right? That means it was always meant to self-destruct. Now, while that is the case, there are ways, or rather gentler ways, in which you can employ your light, and that, honestly, is exactly what I'm talking about. Gentler ways in which you can shine your light, be authentic, be kind, be honest, and speak truth without um, having it be very destructive. Because believe it or not, light can be quite as destructive as darkness. So with that being in mind, with that in mind, the next point is that I wanted to actually bring up something that even the Bible itself talks about this. Now, you don't have to be religious, by the way, to gain any wisdom from the Bible. Personally, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual, but I'm not associated with any religion per se. However, I do 100% believe the Bible has amazing points and amazing wisdom to glean from. And while writing up my topics to make this video, one of the things I saw is a wonderful scripture in Colossians chapter 4 verse 6, and I'll read it here. It says, "Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone." And I think that's such a vital an important scripture because, as it says here, let your conversations be always full of grace. And tact and grace go hand in hand. They need each other to work together, right? To work in general. Because without having grace for another human being, you will not have the discernment to be wise in how you speak to them and what you say to them. Your words will not be, as the scripture said, seasoned with salt, right? So, to emphasize on that, I'm just looking through my points, don't worry about it. To emphasize on that, the next point would be, well then, okay, how do you be more graceful when it comes to others? How do you give others more grace, right? And how do you apply that to your life? So I'll give a personal example. I have a roommate, right? And we've been living together for a couple of months. And sometimes there are situations where there are things I notice which I could mention, like little things which I could mention, but I don't. Why? Well, one main reason is to keep the peace, right? And two is because I always think about the intention behind someone's actions or inaction for that matter, right? So to talk more about point number one, about keeping the peace, I'll give another example about parents and children. I've seen this so many times where, parents will have their kids and they will just nag their child about everything. Everything is a lesson. Everything is, don't do that. Don't do this. Hey, didn't I tell you to do this, that? Didn't I tell you, da, da, da? You don't listen. You're so disobedient. And then eventually what happens is the child starts to go very annoyed and resentful of their parents because they can't even seem to have a conversation with their parent, as the parent has just cemented themselves in the sort of teacher and student thing where everything is a lesson, right? That is not how you want to interact, well, again, with your child, but more so, that's not how you want to interact with anybody in general. Can you imagine interacting with somebody who you're around and every single time they always have some sort of lesson or something to tell you, hey, you should do this. Hey, you should do that. Hey, you should do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. It trust me, I think I speak for everyone when I say that would annoy you immensely. You would grow to probably resent that person and you would try to keep your distance from them, right? Even though what that person may be saying is true, that doesn't help you feel any better about it, does it though? It's not encouraging. And it's the same thing with the parent and child situation where, the parent may be right. Absolutely. You told your child to, hey, I thought I told you to pack your toys once you finish playing. And then the child, ends up doesn't do it. And then now you're coming in as the parent, you have to teach them a lesson, discipline them. But thinking about it, the way I would approach that, I would approach it completely differently, because I am not only giving my child grace to be a human being and acknowledging that they make mistakes, I'm also what's the phrase I want to use? I am also I'm losing my train of thought. I swear it's the mind fogginess. I apologize. One second. You see, normally I would cut this out, but I don't want to. I want this to be as organic as possible. Be with me for the pauses as well. I greatly appreciate that. It'll come back to me if it's important. But essentially, that's what you're doing. You're leaving room for that person to be a human being. We all make mistakes. So it's not something where, you have to mention something every single time. Yes, you may be 100% right, but that doesn't cultivate the spirit of peace within your environment, and that's what you want, right? That's what you want. So, in essence, tact is giving people grace, right? And not calling out their every single mistake, no matter whether you may be right or wrong. And it's something where, again, that took me a long time to realize. I'd be in situations where I would just say it how it is and I would be right. But that made the situation worse, right? There were ways that I could have done things that would have been so much more better. So again, to circle back to the parent example, if I were a parent, so I'll use the same example. Told my kid, okay, hey, you can play, that's fine. But once you finish, make sure to pack up after yourself. Let's say I come into the living room, toys are still out. I'm not going to call my child and be like, hey, I thought I told you, da 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 da. No, I'm just gonna clean it up myself. Now you may think, well, isn't that sort of weak? No, because again, the 2 points I mentioned before. One, I want to keep the peace. I don't want my child to be afraid to speak to me. I don't want my child to grow resentful of me because I'm always teaching them a lesson. Yes, it is my responsibility as a parent to raise them up and demonstrate to them responsibility, accountability, and the like. But I don't want them to think that that's all I am. You're not just the teacher for your child. You're the parent, and a parent is like a whole spectrum. It encompasses a lot, right? And secondly, as I mentioned prior, it's all about the intent. I think about the intent behind any action and inaction. So I know my child automatically is a good child. I know that. I know my child is not going to deliberately disobey me just because they want to be rebellious. I'm taking into account the context of the situation. They're a child. Children forget things. They're absent-minded. They don't understand the concepts of responsibility yet. That's literally something their brain cannot comprehend because they're too young, right? So when I have that in mind, I'm like, okay, obviously my child did not disobey me because they were like rebellious or they wanted to be disruptive. I'm not finding an issue with it, and I'm not gonna call them out on it or anything. Obviously if it ramps up, then I will remind them, but in a gentle manner. I don't have to rough them up to get my point across. And it's the same thing with my roommate. There are things where I could say something, but if I see something that they left out, or something that needs to be done that involves them, I don't make a big fuss out of it. I just get it done. I just do it. Simple as that. And it helps promote the peace in the environment. That's why, when you're interacting with others who are just like what I just mentioned, it's so easy, it's so peaceful, right? And I can personally tell you from experience, after employing this, right, and giving people more grace, my relationships and my interactions with people have grown so much more fulfilling, so much richer, so much more positive, right? Simply by employing that, right? You don't have to mention everything. Yes, you may be feeling a kind of way, but again, it's all about tact and grace, which again, they go hand in hand, right? And yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think that there's any other further things that I would want to raise. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, summary: if you want to be more tactful, the simplest way I can tell you is one, give yourself more grace, because, side note, you can't give others grace if you don't have grace for yourself. If you're not loving towards yourself, if you don't fully value yourself and have that self-worth and self-esteem, you're not going to value others, you're not going to think others have worth, you're not going to respect others, you're not going to give them grace, right? So apply it to yourself first, and then apply it to others, and always keep that in mind when you're interacting with others. Hey, this is a fellow human being who also makes mistakes just like everybody else, just like I do, right? Give them room to be that, to be themselves, right? And always take into account their intention and the context. Is this person doing this or not doing this because they hate me, because they don't like me, or is it because maybe they forgot, or is it because they have something else going on, or maybe it's because they're going through something? You don't know. And if you want to know, guess what? You can ask. Communicate. That is always and will always be the best thing to do when it comes to resolving conflict. And thirdly, context, which plays into the second point, right? What I just said, context. Think about what the context could be, and that will help you just not stress about it. You just won't have to stress about it because okay, they probably did this or didn't do this because da 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 da, and then again you can just ask them if you're not sure, if you want some clarification, right? So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. Tact, how to be better at it, and I hope this video helps. If it did, feel free to give it a like, subscribe, let me know your thoughts in the comments if there's anything you think I should improve on when it comes to making videos, since I am still pretty new to this. I'm using the equipment I have to the best of my ability, but if you do have any tips, suggestions, please let me know. Hit me up. I would be more than happy to take those suggestions and implement it in my future videos. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you for watching if you've made it this far, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.